At Fort Bend, Houston, and our community partners, we have tried very, very hard to have a forum where we did not want to be impartial, or we wanted to make certain that we invited everybody. We did not want any form of favoritism for anyone. So we wanted to be very, very impartial. So when the candidates, they took a number, we did not decide on what order that they would speak or what order that they would seat, but they chose a number. And whatever number that they chose, that is the seat that they would be sitting in. So we invited all candidates because we think that everybody, if they paid their money to file, we should get a chance to hear from them. So, okay, hold on a second. This is candidate who he pulled number 1. Please give your name.
نوفل هجامي.
Okay. You want to say it again?
نوفل هجامي.
Okay. This is candidate number 2. Give us your name.
Pastor Kendall Baker.
Candidate number 3. Give us your name.
Bill King.
This is candidate number 4. Give us your name.
Tony Busby.
This is candidate number 5. Give us your name.
Carl David Evans.
Give us your name.
Dwight Boy.
This is candidate number 7. Give us your name.
Derrick Broze.
Candidate number 9. Give us your name.
Johnny Taylor. Mr. Broze?
Thank everyone for putting this together. I appreciate your time and appreciate you coming here to be actively engaged. So my name is Derrick Broze. I'm 34 years old. I'm a lifelong Houstonian. For the last 10 years, I've spent my time in Houston as an activist, as a journalist, and as an advocate. I've focused my work locally, but I've also been everywhere from Standing Rock to Ferguson, using my camera, using my pen to shine a light on injustice. And I've had the pleasure of having the gentleman to my left run away from me and my camera a few times when I ask difficult questions, as well as the previous mayor, the previous police chief, the current police chief, and pretty much anybody else who puts themselves in a position of power will likely find themselves confronted by my camera and the questions. And I'm bringing that to this race now because I think it's going to take somebody who's an advocate and not a politician. And while there are other people in this race claiming not to be politicians, they're still equally connected to, I think a world that's not accessible to the average person. I think we need somebody who actually comes from the communities of Houston, who's born and raised here, and who understands the struggle. And to that point, I'm, I think, the only one in this race who has experience in the criminal justice system. 15 years ago, when I was 20 years old, I had some time behind bars because of a drug addiction I had, and I had to work myself through that. When I got myself locked up, I decided to turn my life around, and I've dedicated my time since then to empowering myself, getting involved actively in my community, and now, as a mayoral candidate, I'm talking about putting an end to the war on drugs in Houston, starting by decriminalizing cannabis and welcoming hemp, which hemp is now legal, industrial hemp, growing hemp along the bayous, the waterways, to help with water flooding and erosion, and generally addressing mass incarceration and criminal justice in a way that has never happened before on the city level. And it's because I know what it's like to get out as somebody who has a felony, somebody who 15 years later still has to deal with that fact. I understand what that's like, and I think it's going to take somebody who really has that experience to come forward and seek to actually create change in this position. Thank you.
The flooding issue here in Houston. The city of Houston has faced 500-year floods in practically every other year or every year. There has been flooding in this part of the city, out in Fort Bend, Houston. And we know in recent days the state government has decided to take federal money that the city needs to do some flood mitigation projects. The question is, what is your plan for flood mitigation? What's your plan for drainage? What's your plan for climate action if you do become mayor?
Mr. Broze.
Thank you. So, yes, I think we do need to acknowledge that we live in a city that is unsustainable. For generations, it's been built unsustainably. We're living at or below sea level, depending on where you're at, and we can expect storms to continue. So these are certain things, certain realizations that we have to have and recognize that unless we start building different and generally start re-greening Houston, we're going to continue to deal with this one way or the other. Now, my plan is what I call Hemp Houston. If you go to derrickbroze.com/Hemp Houston, you'll find out more about it. Now, first off, of course, the money should be going to where you expect it to go. If there's taxes or fees, whatever you want to call it, that's coming out of your pocket and it's supposed to go to drainage or flooding, let's hope and actually try to keep the folks accountable so that that money goes where it's supposed to. But additionally, we need better communication between the county, the Army Corps of Engineers, also private groups like the Buffalo Bayou Partnership and others that I've been out there working with on the bayou. Part of this plan involves re-greening Houston, bringing more urban farms, community gardens, green spaces, food forests to help absorb some of that flood water, that sheet flow, but also, again, planting hemp along the various bayous and waterways as well as widening them. And this is a part of a bigger initiative, as I said, to decriminalize cannabis, end the drug war in Houston, address crime, address flooding, and it's a big picture. It's taking innovation, but I think now that Texas has legalized the use of industrial hemp for farming, Houston has a chance to be the next hub for that, and we can create a whole new industry around that that can also incentivize the oil and gas companies to invest in hemp for fuel research. Thank you.
Fort Bend Houston schools are underperforming. The latest TEA report card indicated that the majority of Fort Bend ISD schools in the Fort Bend Houston received some of the lowest grades in the district. All of the schools are the Title I schools with majority Black and brown student populations. The question to you, how would you proactively support Fort Bend ISD and the public schools in Fort Bend, Houston?
So I think generally when we're talking about education, obviously the city has certain limitations on what we can do, whether we're talking to HAISD or Fort Bend ISD. But what you can do as a mayor is, I think, advocate for those kids who are struggling, right? And I was one of those kids who was struggling, dropping out of school, and if it wasn't for a couple of teachers who actually cared about me, I wouldn't have graduated high school. So I definitely understand, the struggle of just trying to make it through that. I think what we need to do is, as Mr. Taylor was talking about, bring some more innovation and also perhaps start thinking in terms that maybe going into college and even sometimes graduating from high school isn't the only way that a child can get educated and can have skills and can develop. That's not necessarily the path for everybody. Some of us are more interested in trades, and in the world we live in today, we have more decentralized opportunities for children to be educated via online programs, as well as, I guarantee you, there are definitely nonprofits, and especially in the tech sector, organizations that would be more than happy to and willing to come work with students who have an interest in various trades and getting to them as young as possible to get these ideas in the head, help them understand that they can have a bright future, whether or not that lies in a college degree or not. Thank you.
Okay, the next question. Economic development. Chapter 380 of the Local Government Code authorizes municipalities to offer incentives designed to promote economic development, such as commercial and retail projects. Currently, Fort Bend, Houston does not have a first-class grocery store. Please explain how your administration will use 380 agreements and other Texas economic incentive programs like TERS's to encourage high-quality businesses such as quality restaurants and first-class grocery stores to locate in Fort Bend, Houston.
So the idea of the complete communities, if actually functioning the way that the mayor claims it's going to, I think it could be a structure that is beneficial to neighborhoods like Fort Bend in this area if we actually have community involvement. The problem that I think we've seen, and some of the previous speakers have mentioned some of these problems, is that politicians are good at talking about programs, creating new departments, new bureaucracies, new initiatives, and but we have to follow through, right? There's a little bit more than just creating something. We have to keep up with them. We as individuals, when it comes down to it, just because I'm up here with these guys, I'm really one of you. And I'm doing this because we're being ignored. And so at the end of the day, if somebody says they're coming into their community to bring economic incentives, bring more businesses, which is a good thing, we have to make sure there's follow through. Yes, number one, what do you want in your community? What do you want your neighborhood to look like? Because every neighborhood of Houston, every community of Houston should look different based on the needs of that specific community, their specific resources, their specific key part of this problem in areas that are underserved is helping provide economic incentives in the form of small business entrepreneurships, helping people understand how they can get themselves up on their own feet and take care of themselves and then teach other people. You know, where we have a program where we can have entrepreneurs working with the youth and working with others who desire to have businesses. And again, asking the community, what do you want your community to look like? And then listen. Thank you.
On my next question for you. This question relates to a controversy surrounding the Houston Public Library Story Hour, which features city-sponsored drag queen Story Hour, which began in Montrose, Houston's historic gay enclave. The question: would you advocate or support an ordinance or charter amendment prohibiting adult sexual content and performers, such as a drag queen, in the Houston Public Library System programs and materials accessible to children? We'll start with Mr. Broze on this question.
Well, thank you for the easy one. So as a journalist, I actually went to the drag queen story time that took place in the Montrose Library. I interviewed the folks who were outside protesting, got to hear why that was important to them, and I interviewed some of the folks who were, felt like they were protecting the drag queens, the readers, from the protesters, and got to ask both of them, why is this important to you? Why do you feel like this is necessary? And I got to ask the folks who were protesting, what's your main issue? From what I gathered from talking to those who were, actively engaged, is they're concerned about tax dollars going to programs like this. So, for example, the library being funded by taxpayers, it rubbed these folks the wrong way to have something like that happen. Now, I also think it's important to communicate with the drag queen, the drag queen storytime community and the drag community of Houston in general as well, and to have that conversation. I think too often we have this talking past each other, and of course we see it all the time on these stages and in politics in general. We need more community dialogue. We can all agree, and disagree on different lifestyles, but I do think there are some core issues that it does bother people. People feel uncomfortable when drag queens, which whether intending to be sexual or not, somebody dressing up in this way, speaking to children, I think it does offend people. So at the end of the day, I would fight for preventing tax dollars to going towards supporting or funding any kind of event like that. And that's nothing against that community at all. I think it's just, if we're going to be fair to all taxpayers, we shouldn't use taxpayer dollars to fund programs that are going to be controversial like that. Thank you. So I do agree that, we need to push back on state institutions. I get sick of politicians saying, well, the state has preempted this, or the state won't let us do that. I mean, aren't the people of Houston ready for a mayor that's actually going to fight for them and stand up for them and represent them on the state level and the national level? I mean, I'm personally sick of just saying, well, the feds, they got control of this. There has to be an effort, I think, to push back instead of just kind of passing the baton down to the next administration who's going to deal with the same problem. So pushing back against the TCEQ, I think, is a good idea. Additionally, I mentioned earlier my Hemp Houston plan. A big part of this is to incentivize oil and gas companies, the petrochemical companies. Many people benefit from oil and gas around Houston, and they don't want to hear the fact that we're dealing with, and this city is built on an unsustainable fuel, and that all the practices that surround it are hurting the environment. In that line of thinking, I really think it's a smack in the face to anybody who cares about the environment and to the waterways and to Houstonians that we continue to have City of Houston events with Shell and Chevron as the sponsors for them, when these are the companies that have been involved with environmental disasters around the world, and yet we continue to partner with them. We talk about a climate action plan and we're this green city and green mayor, but then you partner with the companies who are harming people around the country, around the world. And so I want to create, as part of the Hemp Houston plan, we start incentivizing oil and gas companies to invest. It's an up-and-coming industry. Hemp can be used for fuel. It can be used for shirts. It can be used for fiber. We can create an entire new industry around that and start incentivizing these companies to put even 5% of their funds, their research funds, into a pot for that. Thank you.
And we'll be starting with Mayor Turner. My next question is,
Yes, ma'am.
in the current administration, it was reported that the mayor spent $400 million without the council members' approval because each of the contracts was under $50,000. That's roughly 8,000 contracts. The question: what are your thoughts about this policy? And if elected, would you, or re-elected, would you keep this policy in place? Why or why not?
Let me take issue with your question. When you say reported, it came from people who are running for mayor.
No, it didn't.
Yep.
No, it was in the newspaper.
Chris Brown is the one that said it.
If you all want to speak, I'll listen. But otherwise, you're going to respect me like I respect you. And I'm doing my best to. I'm going to respect everybody on this deal.
We're going to
But
ask everyone to speak
That's
only
okay.
in their turn.
I can deal with them myself. No problem.
Yeah, thank you for that insightful information, Mr. Taylor. I think
Anytime,
that
Derrick.
People do appreciate transparency, and when we're talking about city budgets, I can understand a politician, elected official saying, look, it's going to take too much time to tell you, where all the budgets are going, how many contracts we're signing. But, think about it. This is your money. It seems like politicians always say, well, it's too hard, it's too difficult, it's going to take too long. Let us just filter down information, right? And also the other thing, as far as transparency, we're living in a digital age where it is so easy to put this information online. It takes moments to get the information from the budget, the contracts, and immediately have a place that Houstonians who want to keep up with this can go and check and keep up with. And that includes budgets under $50,000. Because as others have pointed out, this is just going to allow a situation that gives government officials a creative way to hide money and to shuffle it around so that you don't see the bigger picture. And that's what they always do. And also to Mr. Taylor's point, at the end of the day, I think when we really look at this race and we look at how the city's being ran and you look at how local media is controlling this race as well and giving you a perception there's only 4 candidates running and you have corrupted officials. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that the local government all the way from the bottom to the top and the media from the bottom to the top is run by organized crime.
That's correct.
And it's time to change it.
It's just a fact.
It's time to change that.
Game over.
Last question.
Will we get a closing statement?
If,
Is there going to be a closing statement or is this the
yeah,
last?
there will be a closing after this. I'm trying to squeeze in one more question before the closing. If I could ask to try to exercise some brevity in your answers so that we can get through them and get everybody out of here on time. It's a very simple question. What is your position on the voter-imposed revenue cap, and would you support going back to the voters to remove the revenue cap if you were elected mayor?
I'm going to do my best to respect your call for brevity. And just if I can, we've been doing these forums for a couple of months, and I'm on the stage with a bunch of adults who have problems listening to basic instructions, and when people say time's up, they keep going. I'm just saying, those are the people running for to be mayor for you. So Bill King is right that the language is mixed up. They call it a revenue cap, it's a property tax cap. And of course, a government official, a politician would talk about your property taxes, money they're getting from you as their revenue because they want their hands in your pocket. And we shouldn't trust them. I don't think we should trust them and remove this and give them the ability to raise more money and raise fees on us if they can't be trusted already. The last question was about lack of transparency. So why give them the opportunity to take more money out of your pockets?
Time is drawing near, and I know that all of our good people here in Fort Bend County need to get on back home. Carl, if you don't mind, I'm just going to give them 30 seconds to wrap things up and kind of put all your best messages into one 30-second block and let us hear what you have. We're going to start with Hujami and then work this way. And then when you see the stop sign, can we cut off mics? Can y'all cut off mics?
Please.
Okay. When you see the stop sign and you keep talking, we're going to cut the mics off.
Can I use my 2 rebuttals to rebut to myself? Or do those just get wasted? Oh, okay. All right. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being out here. Thank you to everybody who organized this. My name is Derrick Broze, DerrickBroze.com to find out the 9 platforms that I'm focused on. We didn't get much into that tonight, but I'm happy to answer the questions that concern you. And again, I want to remind you that Houston is at a pivotal point, at a crucial point, and I think it is a spiritual battle as well. This election is not just about the city of Houston. This is not just another local election. We are the 4th largest city in the country, and what happens here is going to affect the rest of the nation and the rest of the world. So we need to start thinking outside of political hacks and thinking about people who come from the community, and I am your advocate. Thank you.